Welcome once again to Time Between Times storytelling with me, Owen Staton. Thank you so much for joining me here once again at the Time Between Times. This time on New Year's Eve. It's been another difficult year, but we can look forward to better things to come. We can look forward to great times spent with friends. I thank so many of you for listening to me here tell my tales at the Time Between Times. We have become friends. We correspond, we speak, we enjoy tales traditionally told. So on this New Year's Eve, join me again for a tale that happened on New Year's Eve in 1861. But let us wait. Let us sit back. Let us rid our minds of all our cares, all our worries, and let's just take in the words as they are told. Join me around the fire pit as both the moon and the sun stretch to the sky. It's that time, it's neither night nor day, but the sun has gone and the sky is grey. The veil between our world and the fairy world is wafer, wafer thin. For just a few moments, we can reach into the fairy realm. And for a few moments, they can reach into our realm. This is the time that people see ghosts. This is the time that people see lights in the sky. This is the time between times. Relax. Sit back. Enjoy. For on this day, New Year's Eve, in 1861, in a farm in Penally, something truly magical happened. It was dark, it was scary, but it's a tale that we can tell here right now. For tucked up in his bed all those years ago was a servant on a farm in Penally. His name was Edward Morris. He was a bit of a rogue. He would rather go to the pub and sing a song than do any work on the farm. And Thomas James, the farmer, despaired of him. Whenever it was time to work, there was no sign of Edward. Whenever there was time for crops to be taken or animals to be milked, there was no sign of him. He would have dispensed of his services many years ago, but he had made a promise to Edward's parents that he would look after the boy. And he kept that promise. But things became very difficult one Christmas, when Edward became drunk in the old Black Bull pub in Penally, and on staggering home, he met the daughter of another farmer. Her name was Suan, and she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Her hair was as dark as night, but sprinkled with light like the stars. Her eyes were as deep as an ocean. But she looked at him, and between them there was a connection. That Christmas was the greatest Christmas he'd known, for there they met under the stars every night. There they met under an old oak at the cusp of the hill, where they would meet, and they would speak, and they would make plans, for they were now in love. But one night, whilst returning to the farm, Edward made his way over the old stone wall and towards the back door of the farm. But there, Thomas found him, brought him in and sat him down. He had heard whispers in the village of what Edward was doing, and so said to him, "You are not to see that girl any more. Do not go out and visit the girl at night, for people are starting to talk. You must stay in and work in the morning. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand," said Edward. But the next night, at the time between times, the time it was neither night nor day, but the sun had gone and the sky was grey, he felt the calling to meet with Suan. So he looked around the living room door, and there was Thomas sat by the fireplace, supping his ale and puffing his pipe. Edward crept out of the house, made his way to the old oak, sat and waited for Suan, who arrived soon after. They waited until the moon was high in the sky. They could feel the villagers singing old Christmas songs. And soon it became so cold they could not bear to sit outside, even though the warmth of love beat heavily in their chests. And at last they kissed, and Edward made his way home. He walked down to the main road that went up to the farm where he worked. But then something strange happened. On this New Year's Eve, in 1861, he saw a light, then 2 lights, then 10 lights, and then 50 lights, all coming down the road towards him. It seemed that he would not be able to pass, for whoever was carrying those lights were many, and the road was thin. Edward waited, and there in front of him came a great procession, all dressed in black. For this was a funeral, but a funeral taking place late at night on New Year's Eve. He had never heard nor seen of such a thing. As they approached closer, he stepped to the side of the road to avoid them. Amongst the congregation, he saw many faces from the village that he knew, but he called out to them, but none of them responded. Soon they brushed past him, pushing him against the wall. He fell to the ground and was trampled under their feet, and although he called for help, called for them to stop, they did not. He arose as the procession passed and looked back and saw a coffin being carried late at night. But then, strangely, although the road itself led to the church, as it went up the great hill, they went off the road, through a field, and made their way round to the back of the church. He had never seen anything like this happen ever before. He was full of bruises, his nose was bleeding, his cheek was sore. He staggered back to the farm. His heart fell even more as he made his way over the wall towards the back door, and there, stood in the light of the house, was Thomas the farmer. "Where have you been again? You have been with that girl, have you?" Thomas, I must tell you what I saw. There was a funeral, late at night, and they didn't go that way to the church that we would normally go. They made their way round the back. "Don't be silly, boy, get to bed. Get to bed." With another clip around the ear. "You have been out drinking. Look at the state of you. Your nose is bleeding. Your arms and eyes are bleeding." Oh. Edward went to bed and awoke in the morning and went outside to look up to the church, to where he had seen the funeral procession, but there was no sign of it. Confused, he went to see the old vicar of the church and told him of what he had saw. He was told not to be silly, for there had been no funeral that night, on New Year's Eve of all nights. So he returned to the farm. Though still sore from the night before, he felt that he should apologise to his employer. So he bought a loaf of bread from one of the locals, took it back to the house, walked through the old wooden door and into the living room. And there was Thomas, sat by the fireplace. "Thomas! Thomas!" called Edward. But there was no response. For Thomas was dead, his head on his cheek, his face pale, his pipe on the ground, the fire dying in the hearth. Edward was flummoxed. He had not known anything like this at all. He called everyone from the village and all gathered round. And 2 days later, Thomas's funeral was held in Penally. But as it made its way up the path towards the church, a great frost had fallen, and the path was unpassable. The procession made their way over the wall and round the back of the church, just like Edward had seen, just like the vision that had occurred to him on New Year's Eve. His wounds still hurt, and as he looked around at the procession, the same faces were there, dressed in the same way as he had seen those 2 nights before. he went back to the farm. He married Sue, but looked after the farm, did everything he should have done when Thomas was alive, cared for the place, cared for the animals, until his dying day. He was forever shaken by the phantom funeral that he had seen that night, New Year's Eve, 1861. Spooky tale, my friends, but one just before New Year's Eve, one for you to enjoy this time between times. Thank you again for all your support. Please, if you know anyone else who may be interested in these tales, our numbers are growing, but please, if you haven't done so already, please like or subscribe so I know that you're there. Leave a comment. Let me know if you're enjoying the tales. If you want to buy me a coffee, please go to ko-fi.com/Owen Staton. You would be most welcome. Until next time, the next time we meet at the time between times, Happy New Year. Blwydden Newydd dda. It's going to be a great year next year, my friends. Let us gather and enjoy tales traditionally told. All the very best to you. Nos da.